Hello, and welcome to The Other Side of Lucy Letby, a podcast that looks at the medical and scientific evidence used to convict the neonatal nurse of multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. So we're just going to deviate a little bit from what I normally do, and we're going to look at a podcast on YouTube called Crime Scene 2 Courtroom. He has 89,000 followers, so fair play to him. And you get an idea what people are listening to with regards to Lucy Letby. You'll also get an idea just how powerful an argument can be without really having much substance to it. This YouTube channel says, in the case of Lucy Letby, there's been a lot of misinformation lately. And this has appeared in various mainstream articles, interviews and documentaries created by individuals who did not attend the trial. That would be me. I didn't attend the trial. Do I have to attend the trial to know when something makes sense and when it doesn't make sense? No. To help dispel these falsehoods, so everything I'm saying is a falsehood, even though I cite medical literature and I reference everything that I do say, it's a falsehood, it's misinformation. And I think this is a sad reflection on the world that we're in now, that you can't debate facts anymore and establish whether they are facts. So this video will be a part of a series that dives deeper into the case of Lucy Letby, which is what I thought I was doing. The following information is taken directly from transcripts approved by the court, so that's what's called an appeal to authority. Because something was said in evidence or argued in evidence, it has to be true. No, it doesn't. The main goal of this series is to remove any personal opinion or bias and simply present the facts of the case as told in the court. Facts as told in the court. Stable, the baby was stable, the baby was stable was a fact that was repeated to the court when it really doesn't bear much scrutiny at all. Now, at the end of 9 months, we're hearing the summary of the evidence against Lucy Letby, and we're going to move to baby F. Nicholas Johnson, KC, summing up. Now, again, persuasive argument, but let's see if there's any facts in it. Moving to baby F, Lucy Letby knew what the effects of neonatal hypoglycemia were. She told the police in an interview, and she told you in evidence. Importantly, she told the police and you at the time of these events she did not know about C-peptide. Therefore, if you are sure that it was he who poisoned the bag or bags of TPN, we suggest that you would have little difficulty in concluding that she intended to kill baby F. So, asking the jury to accept that she poisoned a bag of insulin because she didn't know about C-peptide, but she did know about hypoglycemia. There's a really serious problem with this immediately in terms of medicine, in terms of science. How much insulin did they find in the bag? They didn't find any because they didn't look. It's a supposition, premise, that there was insulin in the bag. And we're going to draw that conclusion from a C-peptide reading, from a single C-peptide reading. And unfortunately, we cannot do that. We can't draw such a conclusion from a single C-peptide reading, particularly this C-peptide and insulin reading. It carries on. You will not forget, not least because I won't let you forget, that by the time BBL was poisoned, the level of insulin in BBL's blood was double what it was in BBF's blood. So here we go. We're conflating BBL with BBF. That's a very clever thing to do. And we're saying that we know what the levels of insulin in BBL's blood and BBF's blood were. Where do we get the level of insulin? Who measures the level of insulin in these babies' blood? No one. Somebody measured using a commercial immunoassay. Someone measured antibodies to insulin, which is not the same as measuring insulin. If you want to, you can measure insulin using mass spectrometry. You can't measure it using immunoassays because a lot of these immunoassays are not specific enough to measure insulin. So that tells you a lot about intention, doesn't it? Now, baby A, so now we flip from baby F to baby L to baby A. His death had nothing to do with what was in his dextrose bag. How do we know that had nothing to do with what was in his dextrose bag? We don't. Even the pathologist couldn't determine whether it had anything to do with that. One of the side effects of dextrose, well, there's common side effects: diarrhea, vomiting, upset stomach, pain or tenderness at the injection site, flushing. And then there's more serious side effects. There's rash, itching, sweat on the face, tongue, severe dizziness, trouble breathing, fainting, confusion, fever, sweat on the hands and feet, sweating with pale skin and severe shortness of breath and chest pain. There's electrolyte imbalances. Is it possible that doing dextrose against the background where there was little glucose available, if any, to the baby, that would make the potassium go low as the glucose rushed into the cells? Yes, there is a possibility of that. And fluid shifts from the intracellular to the extracellular space. And there's all kinds of things. They are rare, but no one in medicine discounts rarity. But Lucy Letby knew that that wasn't the case. And then he goes on, I'm skipping about a bit. I'm back at baby A just to make a point. For reasons that you will understand, we suggest that Lucy Letby knew that it had nothing to do with what was in the bag. So I've just listed things that can happen with the bag. And then, of course, there's the line as well, which even Dr. Harkness, who pulled it out at the time that baby A's death, thought it may have something to do with the line. But you remember that when she was interviewed about baby A, she told the police that in the aftermath of baby A's collapse, she had asked for the bag to be kept. Do you remember that? It's the dextrose bag back in June 2015. Well, let's see what we make of this. You will remember she said she labelled it, I think, and put it in the sluice room, and her friend Nurse A was asked about that, and she confirmed that Lucy Letby had asked for the bag to be kept. And there never was an examination of the bag, was there? That, you may think, is quite important, because a child, this is child A, was attached to a bag. He died within a short time, and the bag was never examined. That would give, or could give, if you were determined to injure a child, give you perhaps a degree of confidence that if you tried it again, no one would actually examine the bag. So what does the failure to examine a bag as someone labels and leaves in a sluice room for the pathologist, what does that have to do with why the baby died? It doesn't have anything to do with it. In my career, I have left behind suture, dressings, drugs, drips, all kinds of things for a pathologist to examine. Now, were they examined? In some cases they were, in some cases they weren't. Could I have ever been sure that they would be examined? No matter how much I stressed the urgency of the need to examine these things, it couldn't determine whether they were or weren't examined. But it would be good practice if you're trying to determine the cause of death to include all the information, including the given set, the drip, put it in a bag, sign it up, and ask for the pathologist to look at it, because you just never know. But he goes on, she knew no one would examine it. Well, I don't think she did. I think that she hoped someone would examine it. And when Lucy Letby was being interviewed about baby F, back to baby F now, so we've gone from baby F to baby L to baby E and back to baby F, we suggest in effect she taunted the police saying, have you got the bag? I'm not saying that's the exact phraseology or the tone in which she said it, but she repeatedly asked the question in an interview, have you got the bag? And here we're tying up baby E, baby F, baby A, and we're tying them into one neat bundle where there's actually nothing linking them at all. Professor Hindmarsh told us, Professor Peter Hindmarsh, you'll remember, told us that the relative consistency of blood sugar levels in baby F through August the 5th meant that it was legitimate to infer that there was a consistent level of insulin being administered to him throughout the day when the TPN was running. It would also be legitimate to infer that the baby was producing a steady amount of insulin as well, because that's possible. We don't know if there's insulin in the bag. The baby can make insulin, and the baby was making insulin. You could infer that too. it's a matter of opinion because you don't know. So we heard, you'll remember, quite a lot from Dr. Milan about the quality assurance procedure at the lab at the Royal Liverpool University Hospital, and that results of her and her lab's analysis were reliable. No doubt they were reliable. But would any physician go by the result of one aberrant test before they made a decision? Generally not. They would go by many things, but they wouldn't just go by one test, particularly an immunoassay test. It doesn't measure insulin, it measures antibodies, for instance, so all kinds of interference can happen with that test. You remember that in evidence, Lucy Letby herself appeared to accept there was insulin in BBF TPN bag. Well, everyone accepted that there was insulin in the baby's TPN bag because no one pointed out that it wasn't tested. Now, the bag, which was hung by Lucy Letby, was produced in the aseptic unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital. And we know that there couldn't have been insulin put into it in the pharmacy, and I have no doubt there was no insulin in it. I don't think there was ever any insulin in it. It was back to November 29th last year, and you recall that Ian Allen from the lab gave evidence that he was the man, he was in charge of the unit at the time. And again, these guys, technicians and these pharmacists are very, very good at their job. We have no reason to doubt him at all. And that wasn't challenged on Lucy Letby's behalf. No, of course it wasn't, because why are you going to challenge a guy who's worked in a hospital for years and years and hasn't made any particularly spectacular errors? There's no need to. We just have to say, well, we don't know if there was insulin in the bag. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can now be sure that when that bag went into that unit, it was not contaminated. Right, so we know it wasn't contaminated when it went into the unit. The actual subject, the bag, objectively, did we examine the bag? No. So we're inferring from another process the effect of insulin in the body, that insulin had to be in the bag. I don't think we can do that. So if you're in any doubt, we invite you to consider all of that. So then he goes on. And second, remember what happened to BBE 24 hours before BBF was poisoned. BBE had been murdered. Well, that hadn't been determined yet because this was coming up of the trial. But BBE, poor BBE bled to death. BBE didn't have a post-mortem. We don't know if BBE was murdered or BBE bled to death from one of the very common reasons that babies bleed, stress and gastric ulceration. But we do know that BBE bled roughly 13-15 mils of blood and then bled another 13 mils of blood, and it was 4 hours before anybody gave him any blood back. So was that a contribution to the death? I think people would argue that it was, but that's not mentioned in the summation. We're building a very convincing story here. In other words, do you really think it's a realistic possibility that either two people were independently attacking children on the neonatal unit, or they both just happened to have selected both twins? Well, what about the possibility that no one was attacking the babies on the ward? Because these very preterm babies die all the time. So why do we have to look for a murderer when explainable events happen? So do you think it's a possibility, and it's a matter of chance, that BBF got insulin the day after his brother was murdered? No, BBF got insulin because the doctors prescribed insulin, and they prescribed insulin because BBF's blood sugar was high. The insulin didn't stay up very long, and they struggled for a couple of days to get the blood sugar right. Did they give too much glucose that forced the blood sugar up? And then when they reduced the blood sugar going into the vein, did the blood sugar go down? Because that happens all the time. And you sometimes struggle until you get exactly the right amount. And when you get the right amount, the blood sugar stays level. Could that have happened? I think it could have happened. So it would follow, ladies and gentlemen, if you agree with that, then the murder has to be by someone who was working in both night shifts. So we're back to that again. And to get to the bottom of that, I'm not asking you to put these up. But if you look at tile 155 and BBE's sequence and tile 101 and child death sequence, It gives you the staff list for each night. So we're back to the staff list now. There were only 3 people who were working post shifts. Valerie Thomas, who was a nursery nurse and therefore would never have been in nursery 1 when baby E was attacked, and wouldn't have the keys for the locked fridge. Valerie Thomas, who was a nursery nurse and therefore would never have been in nursery 1 when baby E was attacked. So we're not talking about baby F now, we're talking about baby E. And we don't know if baby E was attacked because no one witnessed anyone attacking any baby. So again, it's a supposition. And wouldn't have the keys for the locked fridge. Well, the keys for the locked fridge were also attached to the cupboard key. And the cupboard key, I can tell you, in a ward is used a lot more often than the fridge key. But in this case, you couldn't have the cupboard key without having the fridge key. A small point. The second person is Belinda Williamson, Belinda Simcock. She was working both nights, and she was a person selected. Do you think that it's a matter of coincidence? Matter of chance, now thinking about this, to make the note at 2200 hours for baby E. An interesting coincidence. The note for 2200 hours for baby E was when baby E bled. In the case of baby E, the mother said she came earlier. Lucy Letby couldn't remember, she came earlier. These events took place 9 years ago or 8 years ago. 10 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Can't remember, but we've seen in these records that there were people coming in the next day to write notes. There were people writing up notes for things they didn't do. There were people putting notes in the wrong files. This is what happens. These things happen all the time. Wrong times, wrong dates, wrong days, wrong babies. Sometimes you actually put something in the wrong file. This happens all the time. But it's turned into an interesting coincidence. And then the third person common to both shifts was Lucy Letby, who of course had been Child E's or baby E's designated nurse, and who from the signature clearly hung the bag for baby F. So nurses, look out. It comes down to a choice between the two, doesn't it? No, it comes down to the choice between the 3. No one attacked anyone. There was another explanation for what happened. Let's explore those explanations and options because they're multiple and many. And that's where you factor in BBL. So BBL and M. So now with BBL and M, BBM was attacked with air, like BBE. BBL poisoned with insulin, like BBF. And BBL, as you will see, got more than one bag of poison. In this case, dextrose. So this is the case where I think it was BBL that the initial drip was put up. Letby was supposed to have poisoned it. Then the drip, for reasons that could not be known to Letby, was taken down and replaced by another bag. But it also happened to be spiked with poison as well, even though no one tested it either. There's nothing random, ladies and gentlemen, about what was going on in that neonatal unit. I would agree with that. And when you take into account all the other evidence, all the other cases, it's obvious, isn't it, who was responsible? So we go back finally again to BBF's TPN bag was delivered by a pharmacist to the unit at 4 p.m. August the 4th, and it was stored in the locked fridge. Only one set of keys for the fridge, and only the registered nurse was entitled to have the key. And in the fridge with the TPN bag, that was a little vial of insulin. You can look at it if you want. Just looking at the case in isolation, there's a limited number of candidates, isn't there? But we're not looking at it in isolation. We're presenting it as a group. One of the questions might be posed to you is, well, how was it done? You don't have to prove how it was done, ladies and gentlemen, because the evidence shows that it was done. The evidence shows that it could be done and show that it was done. But we all saw the debunking of the so-called tamper-proof port myth, didn't we? When Mr. Allen showed you exactly how the supposed tamper-proof port can be bypassed. Yes, the tamper-proof port can be bypassed. It can also be bypassed by air. The tamper-proof port can suck in air, but that's not useful for this discussion. It can be opened and resealed, contrary to what Lucy Letby said on page 5 of her Child F interviews. Anyone who wanted to could inject about 0.6 to 1 mil of insulin into the bag, and somebody did precisely that. So Lucy Letby must have said that you couldn't bypass the tamper-proof port. So she didn't know you could bypass the tamper-proof port. Well, does everyone know you can bypass the tamper-proof port? Why would you know if you could bypass a tamper-proof port? It's a tamper-proof port. So it's 0.6 to 1 mil of insulin in the bag. That's a very, very small number. And somebody did precisely that. A tiny quantity of insulin had potentially fatal consequences. What mental intention goes into doing that deliberate act of poisoning? Put yourself in the position of a poisoner? You'd never do it, of course. What is the state of mind that does something like that? This was a targeted attack, and it just happened that the target of the attack was the twin of the child who died under the care of Lucy Letby. That is no innocent coincidence. Why is it no innocent coincidence? That baby F was sick, baby E was sick babies in neonatal units could die, twins sometimes die. What's coincidental about that? It is not the result of some conspiracy between the doctors and anybody else at the Countess of Chester. You will remember that in cross-examination, Lucy Letby would not be drawn on the question of whether baby F was targeted. Well, Lucy Letby has denied harming any babies. She said she thought that the bag could have been poisoned. Well, there's much hysteria going on when you're having a trial with so many babies in it. People could end up believing anything. But we know from the evidence of multiple witnesses that insulin is never put in a TPN bag. The fact that there had been insulin in the TPN bag was spotted in 2018 by Dr. Evans. No, it wasn't. When he was conducting his review, and he told you that the case of baby F was referred to him because of that of his brother E was suspicious. Dr. Evans' conclusions were in effect confirmed by both Dr. Bowen and Professor Peter Hindmarsh. It should be said that Dr. Evans chose Dr. Bowen and Professor Peter Hindmarsh. Professor Hindmarsh told you that the half-life of insulin is 4 minutes. The half-life of insulin in an adult is 4 to 6 minutes. But what is the half-life of insulin in a preterm neonate? Is it different? There's a lot of dispute. Some papers quote 9 minutes. I will leave some papers for you to look at. The first contaminated bag was recorded by Lucy Letby. At tile 161, there's a note that baby F vomited at 1:30, so an hour and 5 minutes later. Do you remember Professor Hindmarsh telling you that vomiting is a sign seen in the young, which is associated with hypoglycemia, low blood sugar? He told us that the body's first line of defense against hypoglycemia is to produce adrenaline, and the heart rate goes up. If we look at the observation chart for baby F, we can see a sudden rise in the heart rate at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 3 o'clock. We know that by 1:54, baby F's blood sugar level was dangerously low at 0.8. Anything below, I think, 2.4 is regarded as a problem. This was a threat to the life of baby F. Professor Hindmarsh says that vomiting is a sign seen in the young associated with hypoglycemia. Vomiting wouldn't be well high on the list of things you would see with hypoglycemia in preterm neonates, but I reference that for you. If you look at the observation chart for baby F, we can see the sudden rise in heart rate at 1, 2, and 3, and we know that the blood sugar was low. In any event, you can give preterm babies a lot of dextrose, and it doesn't make the blood sugar go up because they just aren't adapted to controlling blood glucose. Again, people who work in neonatal units would be familiar with this scenario, and they wouldn't be thinking exogenous insulin. They would be thinking prematurity and inability to regulate glucose in the body, and which wore off after a few days in the case of BBF. Stock bag, do you remember there was a replacement of a bag at about midday that day? And the stock bags had about the same amount of insulin in it connected to BBF after Lucy Letby had gone off duty. Right, so Lucy Letby didn't dose one insulin bag, she dosed another insulin bag. She'd have gone off at whatever time, it was 8 or 8:30, whenever she would have left. And the stock bag was undoubtedly hung at about midday. But the important point, of course, is that do you remember Claire Hocknell, the analyst evidence? She told you that she had reviewed the records of the other children in the unit on August 5th. No other child in that unit was receiving TPN, so one child receiving TPN. Well, there was one child receiving TPN without knowing if there's insulin in the bags. You now have 2 bags spiked with insulin. Not 1 bag, 2 bags spiked with insulin. Does that seem likely? I don't think so. How often was the stock being rotated? You heard evidence from Yvonne Griffith about the turnover of TPN stock bag in the ward, and it was very low turnover. If you looked at the turnover of TPN or any substance that you're using, saline, dextrose, whatever, the stock turnover would vary a lot depending on how much you were using. So if you had a run of using TPN, you'd stock a lot of TPN, and if you had a run of using dextrose, you'd stock a lot of dextrose. But you wouldn't usually have the same stock take every month in a medical ward or paediatric ward. So taking the 5th of August as our reference date, 1 bag has been supplied to the unit on June the 30th, 1 bag on July the 16th, 2 bags on the 17th, and then after this incident, a single bag on the 11th. Anything between 1 and 2 bags every 2 weeks. You've seen the layout in the fridge, haven't you? The first bag, the bespoke bag, was contaminated. Easy to do the same thing to the stock bag at the front of the fridge. So the location of the bags and the fridge is used as a reason why we can infer that insulin was added. It's so sly, isn't it? It certainly is, because it's going to be connected to that child at a time when the poisoner isn't there. What does that tell you about the mindset of the poisoner? I think it tells you exactly what Benjamin Meyer said, that you need the mind of Nostradamus. You need to be factoring in so many things, whether or not the bag's going to be checked. No, well, it wasn't checked before. Better just spike 2 bags because this 1 bag might go down. Even though we've only ever used 4 bags or 5 bags in the last 2 months, I've got to make sure I spike 2 of them. Nostradamus, I think, is what Meyer said. I think he's right. This is why it was a targeted attack. We will come to the point a bit later in the next case, BBL. Now, I've talked about 4 cases. You know that insulin was put in while the bag was hanging in BBL. But what better way for a poisoner to cover their tracks than to leave a replacement bag in the fridge to be used by an unsuspecting colleague? It shows a degree of cynical, cold-blooded planning, doesn't it? Yes, Nostradamus. Perhaps not only would it fraught the remedial step of replacing the bag, would also divert suspicion onto someone else and deflect suspicion from Lucy Letby. Well, obviously that didn't work, did it? It hasn't deflected suspicion onto somebody else, so it wasn't a very clever criminal genius, because it didn't work. So we have a situation here where the first bag was spiked and it was taken down. When it's taken down, everything is usually discarded. So we're starting fresh again. And he said it was legitimate to infer from the insulin and peptide results from a blood sample that the level of contamination in both bags was about the same. So Professor Marsh wants me to believe that from one single blood test in each baby, preterm baby, one single blood test, we can infer the exact amount of insulin that was put into both bags. I would love to see the mathematics for that. I would love to see the calculation. Because the other thing we have to bear in mind is the TPN bag will absorb most of that insulin. 60 to 70% of it will stick onto the sides. Now, it can come loose, but usually it will take something like, a detergent or something to get it loose. So that's 0.6 mils of insulin, which is the calculated amount for both bags. So there's going to be only 0.1 of it or 0.2 of it, between 0.1 and 0.2 of it left to go in. And it'll be going in extremely slowly. You'd have to calculate all that. And I somehow find that's improbable. So when thinking about whether or not this is a conspiracy by the Gang of Four, whether you're thinking about whether or not staffing levels and anything to do with this, or even the drains or the sinks in Nursery 1, we invite you to bear all that in mind. So we are to disregard staffing levels, we are to disregard the association, and we are to disregard the contamination of pathogens on the ward as having nothing to do with anything. No, sepsis can cause hypoglycemia, and the baby was on antibiotics. It's possible the baby had sepsis and the antibiotics treated it. But we're to write all that off. We don't have to examine any of that. You know that she has exceptional memory for the details of these cases. She corrected me several times when I got the detail wrong, didn't she? But what was she supposed to do? Because you've got a good memory for events, you've been studying them for your defence for the last 9 months. Of course you've got good memory of the events. I don't mind that. I do get things wrong. No doubt in due course we'll be told that I've got some of the details of what I'm saying to you now wrong, and you can be the judges of that. If I have, I apologise and it's not deliberate. But Lucy Letby, she's right on it, isn't she? Right on the detail of the case. She's right on the detail of the case because her life is on the line. And yet, in interviews with police in 2019, she claimed that she wasn't aware of there having been any concerns about baby F's blood sugars. But we see another message in one of the cases, which we'll eventually get to. Baby F's mother, God love her, left a big hamper into the ward in November, which was 2.5 months later. And the person who opened the hamper couldn't remember baby and baby F at all. And you know that she was lying about that because of the text messages she sent to baby A, to nurse A. Right. As I said to you before, the interview, she was asking the police whether the bag had been kept or had been checked. She knew what the answer would be. How did she know what the answer would be? They're telling her that insulin was in the bag. And she said, well, have you got the bag? I'm imagining myself being cross-examined by these police. I've been in the presence of criminal suspects when they're being questioned. People with mental health problems, people with various health problems, and cops have asked me to sit in. And for the most part, when I was listening to it, I would just say to them, why are you answering any questions these people are asking you? They're clearly looking for information that they don't have. So is it legitimate for you to turn around and say, well, have you got the bag? Have you checked the bag? Was there insulin in the bag? I would like to know if there was insulin in the bag. And he says that she was taunting the police. In page 16 of the interview, baby F, 16, when she came back for her final interview in November 2020, the police broke the news of C-peptide to her. You'll find that on page 22. Lucy Letby's obsessive and surreptitious following of the mother of baby A and F on the internet was never satisfactorily explained, was it? Well, I presume it wasn't, but it still isn't. She undoubtedly poisoned baby F, who just happened to be the twin of the baby she had murdered the previous day. Cold, calculating, cruel, and relentless. What is the forensic evidence, the medical evidence for any of this at all? Very, very little. Immunoassay tests that don't tell you anything. One single blood test in babies that don't really tell you anything. No forensic examination of the bags to tell you was there insulin in it. Spiking 2 bags with the knowledge that one of them was going to have to be replaced. No real change in the stock either of insulin or of TPN that anyone has noted or anyone has mentioned. Routine, 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 routine. I will leave a load of references in the show notes so that you can look up this stuff yourself. And when we get to each of these babies and try and explain what we think was happening to them, we'll go into the insulin and the C-peptide and all of that in more detail. But suffice it to say, no one should regard a single C-peptide and insulin region in a preterm neonate as evidence of anything. And the second thing that I would say, the baby was supposed to have had an insulin level 4,600 plus. I would like to know how this baby maintained safe potassium level in his blood with an insulin level that high. It's more certain that that level of insulin in your blood would kill you by causing hypokalemia, by causing a low level of potassium in your blood that would almost certainly stop your heart. I could not see anyone, even an adult, surviving a level of insulin so high. So in the next episode, we're going to look at baby B and we'll finish off that. And then we move on to baby C and all of the other interesting things that were happening in the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital. So this has been a long episode, but it's covered a lot and give you an idea of what people are thinking. So see you the next time. Bye.